Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a deep and vast game that demands your full attention and time. This is largely why I found myself so frustrated after my first playthrough. If you don't give Xenoblade 2 your full attention, if you play it from marker to marker, you'll miss out on so much of what makes this game special. There are so many beautiful locations and characters that you'll miss. To a JRPG newcomer, this game can be very unforgiving. But that's exactly why I felt so compelled to play it again. I didn't give the game a fair shot to show all its strengths. I thought the story was fantastic and even made me cry at the end, but I felt a sort of fractured relationship with it because I felt like it was broken. But I realized it wasn't the game that was broken, it was me. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an unequivocal masterpiece that too many people will overlook. This is not a review for Xenoblade 2, though I think it will function as one. This is a love letter to one of my favorite games ever. Let me explain. Xenoblade 2 starts out small. You're a salvager boy living on the back of his titan, Gramps. Rex is a young and charming protagonist with nothing special to his name. At this point, right from the beginning, it's easy to criticize Rex as a generic protagonist. Sure, he's young, a bit ignorant, and not fully matured. But it's not about where Rex starts. Rather, it's about where he ends. Xenoblade 2, among many other things, is a coming-of-age story for Rex, and over the 50-hour journey, we'll see just how deep his arc actually is. Rex is someone that us as a player can relate to. He just goes about his daily life, trying to provide enough for himself and do some good along the way. Through this, he integrates into a small community in Argentum. We are introduced to the world of Alrest through Argentum. It's a cheerful, optimistic place where we see people of different races unite. We immediately see how Rex has spent time in Argentum, and it has a clear impact on his personality. The Argentum Trade Guild is such a pleasant and peaceful place that it feels so sudden when he meets Pyra and sets out for Elysium. Elysium has become synonymous with the World Tree, both of which tie into the religion of the world. The story goes in many unexpected directions, but Elysium is a constant in their ever-changing journey. This gives us an opportunity to learn more about Elysium and the rest of Alrest. Much of Alrest is as new to Rex as it is to us. There are a lot of things going on at once in this world. Tense politics, underground arms deals, and assassination attempts going on that the party finds himself in the midst of despite their primary goal. There's very deliberate world building at play, as every area and every character have some greater ties and charm. Nothing is superficial, everything has a reason. Through all its quirks and societies, the world is alive and vibrant, and it entices you to spend more time becoming a part of it. In the beginning of the game, the story is a bit more open, and likewise the titans that you explore are wide open in vast areas. The environmental design here is spectacular, with stunning verticality. It's hard to look at these landmasses and think of them as anything but true, real worlds. They certainly don't feel like video game maps. The worlds are expansive and detailed with varying paths and viewpoints that make exploration all the more satisfying. It's no surprise that the world is beautiful, and the art style really pops in these open landmasses. Sometimes though, the verticality and detail is too much for the in-game navigation to handle, but exploring the areas is so fun that oftentimes you'll stumble to the right place unintentionally. Discovery feels so natural in that regard, and it makes the world even more believable. However, the story does not stay open-ended for long. There's a moment in this game where everything that has been built up over the course of the journey converges. Most games would topple under the weight of so much going on at once, but not Xenoblade 2. The delivery is so intelligent that the story feels epic, not overwhelming. At this moment, the areas you voyage aren't quite as expansive, but this is far from a bad thing. The game never focuses on open world design, but rather open exploration, which can still be found in these tighter areas. There is always other paths to explore, even if they aren't as big and as massive. Plus, this helps the storytelling. There are far more distinct set pieces that help serve the much more intense moments. However, as you get closer to your goal, you begin to expect Rex to go through some spiritual catharsis or ascent. Considering your end goal is Elysium, a sacred heaven, this only makes sense. Yet through the last few chapters, you begin to understand that Elysium is not all that meets the eye. You start chapter 8 in the land of Moritha, which shows a desolate place created and ruined by humans. It's a sore and tragic sight that begins to foreshadow the tragic conclusions of this game. Once you finally make it to the world tree, you realize it's metal. It's man-made. Something like this should feel immediately jarring, but you're so focused on Mallows that it's easy to overlook. As you continue your ascent up the tree, you keep waiting for this spiritual catharsis, but it never comes. And as you wait for the spiritual leaders of Alrest fall apart, in this moment, the Praetor Amalthus becomes an enemy of both Rex and Torna, who he was fighting against. Because of this, we see Torna aid you, and you realize how fake the world is. Their beliefs are not a matter of spirituality, but power. The world is built on a false prayer and spiritual connection that never actually existed. But despite this, as you approach your end goal, as the world falls apart below you, you make it, Elysium. However, this moment is not euphoric, as you discover that Elysium is a doomed and ruined village just beyond a metal door. Looking out into the dusty, man-made world, you realize that the spiritual power of Alrest was fake. There was no spiritual ascent because the world was human. Elysium was supposed to be a spiritual paradise, but it's nothing more than a man-made city that has been passed down and become legend over generations. But this legend was all a lie. The wasteland of Elysium is uncomfortable, unnerving, and depressing. But you still press on, and you find yourself at the face of their god, a man and a sinner. Their god, the architect, was nothing but a scientist who tried to create a universe off of overconfidence and narcissism. He failed, and in doing so he ruined his life and lost half his body. He is a broken man just trying to atone for his sins. You realize in this moment there is so much more to the world beyond Rex and his friends. All the things that they have called holy were nothing but the hands of men. This is the tragedy of Alrest. When you take an ordinary character and put them into an extraordinary situation, you realize that your definition of ordinary was flawed. The characters in Xenoblade 2 are not as simple as they may seem. Rex is a good-hearted child whose main goal in life is to return a favor. But in this, he becomes emotionally connected to Pyra and Mithra and the task at hand. The story focuses on identity and what it means to be an adult. Nowhere is this more visible than Rex. Rex is put through miserable and hopeless situations, but he keeps pushing forward on the belief that there is good in the world. His decisions always seem genuine for the character, and though he wants to do good, we see times where he can only bring about bad. In those moments, when it seems there's no more good that can be done, Rex does not refocus his effort, but gives up on them. Once he can't see any more good in the world, he gives up and tries to move on. This is such a pivotal moment for Rex, as to that point, it's his biggest lesson in what it seems to be an adult. Sometimes you try to do good, and it falls flat, but what matters is there's still good that can be done. We see Rex grow so much through the story as he begins to find his purpose in life, and it all culminates at the bridge scene at the end of the story. Reaching the end of their adventure, Rex and the party reach a bridge. The bridge leads to the end of their journey, and they're all prepared to end it together. But this, just like everything in Xenoblade, is a lie. We see Numa admit to lying, and Rex has to move on without her. He's torn and emotionally beaten. Though he has matured into an adult figure, his emotions haven't changed, and he cannot bear to see her go. This leads to Zeke giving one final line, a poignant reminder of what it means to be an adult. His purpose now becomes protecting the rest of his party, who've become his friends over their adventure. He hates to let go of someone he loves, but he realizes he must, and his friends are still by his side. It's an emotional scene, but one that closes Rex's arc. There's a constant theme of man's power in the world. We are told to believe in the spiritual power of the world, but time and time again we see that these beliefs are nothing but lies. The world is not built on spirituality. It's built and ruined by the weakness of mankind. The game is somber, but every turn feels tragic, and we see the hopeful wonder leave Rex and the rest of his party. But the story is only as strong as its characters. Besides Rex, our party consists of Nia, her blade Dromark, Tora, his blade Poppy, Morag, her blade Brigid, and Zeke with his blade Pandoria. Nia is our first companion, a strong and independent figure who we first see working for Torna. After Rex finds the Aegis, Nia aids him in his survival, though she still wants to return to Torna, her family. She is snarky but lovable, and we can see a heavy weight on her shoulders throughout the story. When she finally reveals this burden just over halfway through the adventure, it's very cathartic. Then Dromark stands by her side and continues to be a guiding vessel for Nia. Between working with Torna and Rex, she is lost for a good bit of the journey, but Dromark is always there to give her wisdom and help her find her way. Then there's Tora, who is generally a comic relief character. Despite this, he does still have his moments, like learning that his father has been kept captive for many years. Though he's usually there for a joke, he's no less of a believable character with emotional growth. His blade Poppy holds a far more important role in the story. She is an artificial blade, so we see her at the beginning of her story, but she still comes into her own. She's determined and passionate, though at the same time she's the first of her kind, and that scares her. The turning point in her arc is a conversation between her and Mithra, where she admits that she's scared of her power. She sees how man has destroyed the world, and she's worried she could do the same. She asks Mithra to kill her if there's ever a time she becomes a threat to humanity. A request that ultimately makes the bridge scene even more tragic. When Numa realizes what she must do, she asks Poppy not to help Rex get to her. And just as she predicted, Rex begs Poppy to take him to Numa, but Poppy refuses. She's torn between keeping her promise or breaking Rex's heart. It's an emotionally poignant moment for her, and she realizes a true happy ending isn't obtainable, but she finally decides to keep her promise to Numa.
It's not okay. Poppy cannot.
Then Morag starts out as your enemy, but after a decent while you realize that your goals align, and she slowly comes to join the party. She's the High Inquisitor of Morardain, and her purpose is primarily to protect her people. We see her growth as she discovers these places of myth were actually real. She's fascinated by learning more of the world. However, it's always clear that while her momentary purpose is to protect her people, she believes that there is a greater purpose in life for her. At the end of the story, we see her ponder if she'll ever find her purpose. This ties into the theme of identity in the story. We don't actually see it fulfilled, but we see her finally realize she has not yet met her true purpose, which is all we need for her arc to close. While Morag's blade Brigid doesn't have much to do in this story, she's still an interesting character. She's been involved in many historic moments in Alrest, and she keeps track of them all in her journal, knowing that she'll forget upon her driver's death. It's interesting to see her in so many of the game's flashbacks doing so many different things, and it just shows how important she has been to the world. Now, Zeke and Pandoria are also comic relief characters for the most part. However, we discover that Zeke has had quite a tragic life of his own, being exiled from his people. Zeke serves as a father figure to Rex, often giving him lessons in adulthood alongside Morag. This ultimately becomes his own identity through the course of the story. This is his purpose in life. All of these characters are great, including the villains. The primary antagonists, Jin and Malos, are incredible adversaries with motivations that make a lot of sense. Jin in particular has had a tragic backstory which leads him from fighting Malos to joining him. He does this because of his hatred for humanity. His long-dead driver Laura was a great companion for him, but as she was about to die, Jin couldn't bear to let go. So instead of letting her die and forgetting, Jin actually kills her, making him a flesh eater. This allows him to live on without a driver, but he grows to hate humanity because of the ones that killed her. He fights so that blades can be free of mankind, and that's what drives him to Malos' side. The great thing about Jin is that multiple times in the story we see Rex save him, and we see him emotionally conflicted. But at the end of his journey, we see him help you as he kills Amalthus. In doing so, he sacrifices his own life in the hopes that you can stop Malos from destroying the world. His change of heart is sudden and jarring, but it's earned and intentional. Then there's Malos, the other Aegis. His relationship with Rex and the party changes drastically over the course of the story. They begin to understand the other party's motivations, but still they feel the ultimate need to stop each other. That makes Malos' ultimate demise not satisfying, but tragic. And how could anyone talk about the characters in Xenoblade 2 without talking about Pyra? Pyra and Rex have an immediate connection, and we see her influence on Rex throughout the story, but she also becomes almost too important to Rex. While she showed Rex the true scale of the world, she also became a burden for him. After seeing Rex get beat down at every turn, she decides that her desires are not worth the pain that Rex suffers, and begs for him to leave her, knowing that that would mean she would never return to her home. There is so much that goes on in the world of Alrest, and everything is carefully considered. Nothing is without a purpose. It helps everything stay grounded and function within the rules of the world. The various revelations that you come through throughout the game are wonderful and cathartic. Monolith Soft truly made something spectacular here, and they put a lot of effort into the small details. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the height of video game storytelling, and it's a masterpiece in its own right. While the first half of the game is not as deeply resonant, it helps the realizations feel more impactful in the second half. Monolith Soft was willing to take risks, and it led them to higher heights. The pacing, characters, and truths of the story make it something that's hard to forget. Xenoblade 2 is a masterpiece.